I want you to notice something the next time you are driving. Pay attention to who is driving what. You'll see someone in a brand new 45,000 SUV pulling into an apartment complex. You'll see someone in a 12-year-old Honda Civic pulling into a gated neighborhood with million-dollar homes. And if you pay close enough attention, you'll notice a pattern that seems completely backwards. The people who can least afford new cars are the ones buying them. And the people who could easily afford any car they want are driving vehicles that are old, paid off, and sometimes even ugly. This isn't a coincidence, and it is not about taste. It is about two completely different relationships with money that determine whether you stay broke or build wealth. Today, I am going to show you why poor people buy new cars, why rich people drive old ones, and what this pattern reveals about the math that keeps most people trapped. Let's get into it. Let's start by understanding the psychology and math behind why poor people buy new cars. And when I say poor people, I am not talking about people living in poverty. I am talking about people who are income, rich but wealth, poor. People making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year, but have almost nothing saved. Here is what happens. Someone making $55,000 a year needs a car. Their old one finally died, or they just got their first real job and need reliable transportation. They have maybe $2,000 in savings, not enough to buy a decent used car in cash. So they go to a dealership. And here is where the trap activates. The salesperson doesn't ask, "How much can you afford to spend on a car?" They ask, "What monthly payment works for your budget?" This is the first psychological trick. They've reframed the purchase from a total cost to a monthly obligation. The person thinks, "I make about $3,400 a month after taxes. I can probably handle $400 a month for a car." So the salesperson shows them cars in the $22,000 to $28,000 range. Not used cars, new cars, or certified pre-owned, which is just dealer speak for expensive used cars. And here is what is running through the buyer's mind. "I've been driving a beat-up 2008 sedan for years. I work hard. I deserve something nice. A new car has a warranty. I won't have to worry about repairs. This is an investment in reliability. I need this for work." All of this sounds rational. It feels justified. So, they sign a 6-year loan at 7.5 interest for a 26,000 car. Monthly payment, $425. And they drive off the lot feeling like they've made it. Like they're finally an adult with a real car. But let's look at what actually just happened. Over 6 years, they'll pay $30,600 for that 26,000 car. That is $4,600 in interest alone. The moment they drove off the lot, the car lost about 11 of its value. It is now worth $23,140. After 6 years, when the loan is finally paid off, the car will be worth approximately $11,000. They paid $30,600. The asset is worth $11,000. They lost $19,600 in value. Plus they paid for insurance, gas, and maintenance the entire time. The total cost of ownership for that reliable new car over 6 years is roughly $45,000. But here is the devastating part. That $425 monthly payment isn't just $425. It is $425 that could have been invested. If they had bought a $6,000 used car in cash and invested that $425 every month for 6 years at 8 average return, they'd have $38,000 in investments. Instead, they have a 6-year-old car worth $11,000 in zero investments. The new car didn't cost them $26,000. It cost them $27,000 in wealth they didn't build. This is why poor people stay poor. Not because they don't earn enough, but because they finance depreciating assets while rich people invest in appreciating ones. Now let's look at how rich people think about cars. And when I say rich people, I am not talking about trust fund kids or celebrities. I am talking about people who have systematically built wealth. Net worth of 2 million, 5 million, 10 million. People who could walk into a dealership and pay cash for any car on the lot without even checking their bank account. Here is what they do instead. Let's say someone has a net worth of 3 million. They need a car. They could easily afford a 90,000 Mercedes. They could lease a new car every 3 years for the rest of their life and barely notice the expense, but they don't. They buy a 7-year-old Toyota Camry with 95,000 miles for $8,500 in cash. To an outside observer, this looks insane. Why would a millionaire drive a car that a college student would drive? But here is what is happening in their mind. They're not thinking about what they can afford. They're thinking about opportunity cost. If they spend 90,000 on a new Mercedes, that is 90,000 that is not invested. 90,000 invested at 8 annual return becomes 97,200 after 1 year. 194,000 after 10 years. 388,000 after 20 years. That Mercedes, meanwhile, becomes worth maybe 35,000 after 10 years. So the real cost of buying that Mercedes isn't 90,000. It is the 194,000 they didn't have after 10 years. The 8,500 Camry, on the other hand, does the exact same job. It gets them from point A to point B. After 10 years, it is worth maybe 2,000. They lost 6,500 in depreciation. But the 81,500 they didn't spend on a luxury car has been invested and grown to approximately 176,000. This is why rich people drive old cars. Not because they're cheap, because they understand that every dollar spent on a depreciating asset is a dollar that is not compounding. And here is the part that most people miss. Rich people don't feel deprived driving that old Camry. They feel wealthy because they know what is in their investment account. Poor people, on the other hand, feel wealthy because of what is in their driveway. One is real wealth, the other is the appearance of wealth. So why do poor people buy new cars when rich people don't? It comes down to signaling. When you don't have wealth, you need to signal status through consumption. The car you drive communicates something to the world. It says, I am doing well. I am successful. I've made it. For someone making $55,000 a year, that new car is proof of progress. It is evidence that they're not struggling anymore. And in a society that judges success by what you own, rather than what you've accumulated, this makes psychological sense. If you pull up to work in a 2008 beater, people make assumptions. Maybe they're not doing well. Maybe they're struggling. If you pull up in a 2023 model, people think they must be doing well. The problem is that these signals are expensive, and they're financed. You are paying $425 a month for the feeling of looking successful. Rich people, on the other hand, don't need to signal status through cars because their wealth is secure. They have investment accounts, real estate, businesses. Their status isn't dependent on what they drive. In fact, many wealthy people intentionally drive modest cars as a form of counter-signaling. It says, I am so secure in my wealth that I don't need to prove anything to you. Warren Buffett famously drove a 2014 Cadillac XTs for years. His net worth is over $100 billion. Mark Zuckerberg drives a Honda Fit. Net worth, over $100 billion. These aren't people who can't afford nice cars. These are people who understand that nice cars don't build wealth. Here is the brutal truth. If you need a car to feel successful, you are not successful yet. Real wealth is invisible. It is in accounts, investments, and assets that grow. Fake wealth is visible. It is in driveways, garages, and parking lots. And the more you spend signaling fake wealth, the less you are building real wealth. Let me show you what this car decision looks like over a lifetime. Scenario 1. The new car buyer Jod makes $60,000 a year. Every 6 years, he finances a new car for around $26,000. From age 25 to 65. That is roughly 7 cars. Total paid in car payments, $214,200. Total value of cars at age 65, maybe $12,000. The last one, net cost $202,200. But remember, it is not just what he spent, it is what he didn't invest. If he had invested those car payments at 8 return over 40 years, he'd have approximately $1.4 million. His car decisions cost him $1.4 million in retirement wealth. Scenario 2. The used car buyer Jod makes the same $60,000 a year, Every 6 years, he buys a reliable used car for $8,000 cash, from age 25 to 65. That is 7 cars. Total cost $56,000. But instead of making 425 monthly car payments, he invests that money. At age 65, his investment account, approximately $1.4 million. Same income, same 40-year period. $1.4 million difference. One person retires with a paid-off car worth $12,000 and no savings. The other person retires with a paid-off car worth $8,000 and $1.4 million in investments. The difference? One person bought new cars to feel successful. The other bought old cars to become successful. Here is what you need to understand. Poor people buy new cars because they're trying to look wealthy. Rich people drive old cars because they're trying to be wealthy. And the gap between looking wealthy and being wealthy is about 1.4 million over a lifetime. This isn't about judging people who buy new cars. I get it. The emotional pull is real. You work hard. You want something nice. You want to feel like you are making progress. But you need to ask yourself a question. Do you want to feel successful for 6 years? Or do you want to be financially free for the rest of your life? Because you can't have both. The 425 car payment is either going to a bank, or it is going to your future. Every single month, you are making that choice. And the people driving the nice cars aren't the ones building wealth. They're the ones funding the banks that lend money to the people driving old cars who are actually becoming millionaires. It is counterintuitive. It looks backwards. It doesn't feel fair. But the math doesn't care about feelings. The car in your driveway is either an asset that compounds or a liability that depreciates. Choose wisely. If this video changed how you think about car payments, hit subscribe. I make these because most people are 1 or 2 decisions away from completely different financial outcomes. Maybe this is one of yours. Thanks for watching.